We also have to talk about, 1979 is the year that sort of Iron Man in the world of comic books became the, grew into the iconic character that it really established who he is to this day, over 30 years
Right,
later.
he was kind of a second-tier character up to that point, and then you get Demon in a Bottle, which, Marvel Comics has always been really good at character vulnerability. Most Marvel heroes, their weakness is themselves, something within them, some flaw, whether it be the Incredible Hulk's power or whether it be Wolverine's anger, and you just go down a list. Almost everyone. Yes, Peter Parker's haunted because of what happened in his family. Tony Stark's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I remember reading this book. I found this pile of old comic books when I was in elementary school, and this whole series was there in it, and reading these and being like, oh, this makes so much sense. Suddenly, Tony Stark, who was just this kind of guy that walked around in a big metal suit, became a real hero because he had something inside himself that he had to overcome, and other people suffered because of what had happened within him, because of this vulnerability, and because he was tragic, very much like, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but very much like a great Norse hero. He was vulnerable, he had to fail, and he had to overcome, and in the overcoming became a hero even though he lost something. Demon in a Bottle does that better than most comic book storylines did at that time.
He even turns on his allies. I mean, he's got Betty Cabe, who's his girlfriend. He's got Jarvis, who's his butler. Like, he really gets awful to them.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with all these other pressures. There's Hammer Industries, this British outfit's trying to take down Stark International, and he ends up, they end up taking control of his armor, and he ends up killing some foreign diplomat in full view of the public. And then now he's sort of on trial for murder, and his girlfriend's giving him a hard time, and this guy's trying to buy his company, and it's like he turns to alcohol as a refuge.
And I was only a kid, and I grew up in a very stable family, but I knew drunks, and I recognized that meanness, and I recognized that frustration, and it made him so identifiable, so relatable. And when he did make it through it, when he finally overcomes it, it's just a beautiful moment. And suddenly this guy turns from kind of second-tier Bruce Wayne of the Marvel Universe into somebody I was followed religiously for the rest of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's certainly a huge number of people that are in your boat. It established the character that we're still, that they're still building on, in 2015, all these years later.
I don't know that Disney's ever going to get that dark with the character that most people are exposed to.
No, I mean, they've touched on
those
certain
origins.
aspects of those characters, certainly in the movies, but yeah.
I think we used to expect that they might go in that direction, but it was before Disney owned Marvel. And the filmmakers kind of, back when it was still Jon Favreau, he was sort of saying, yeah, we're going to get to that maybe, but I think you're right, it doesn't make much sense. And once Disney bought it, there's elements of it in the second one, Iron Man 2, sort of. But
there's also the weird real-world meta thing with Robert Downey Jr., who almost lost his career.
It's a perfect
That's why it always made sense that he was the one cast as Iron Man, right? I just wanted to point out, there's a weird bit of trivia, which is in one of the last issues of the storyline, Jarvis quits because he can't take it anymore. And he writes a note to, a letter of resignation, basically. And apparently that letter was actually Dave Cockrum, I believe, a Marvel artist. It was the actual letter he had written when he resigned from Marvel, and they just put Jarvis's name in place of Cockrum.
Wow.
There's a great book called Marvel: The Untold Story, and it's full of all these little anecdotes where you realize the things that are playing out in the panels are actually representing struggles and sort of attitudes and arguments that are going on within Marvel at the time. And that's just one fantastic example.
That's a great book, isn't it? Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.